Hello again everybody and welcome back to Test Flight in the MiG-15. We're approaching the home stretch now. We're almost mission ready in the MiG. Now we just need to figure out how to communicate and navigate, which are pretty important if you expect to survive your mission. It's kind of a big deal to be able to find your way to the target and then find your way back before you run out of fuel, I would say. In this one, let me just go ahead and create a mission, the mission editor. And we'll just do some navigation around the map. So let me find somewhere that I just never fly at. I've never flown out of Gudauta. I've never really done anything up here. I'll go out of Napa this time around. I don't think I've ever flown anything out of here, come to think of it. So let me go ahead and just throw down a MiG-15 right here. And I'm going to change the country to Russia. I'm going to change it, of course, to a MiG-15. And I'm going to change the skill to player so that this will be my aircraft. Now, I want to this time go up with the 4 ships, so I'll be able to play around with the communications and make sure that I can communicate with all the flight. So there we go. That's 4 MiG-15s down on the map. Now I want to make this a... What do I want to do here? Do I want to do the startup again? I do, because I need a little bit more practice at it. I might cut that out of the video and just do that on my own, but I'm going to make this a takeoff from ramp. And you can see that it kind of scattered me and my flight members to the 4 winds around this airfield. Now let me decide where I actually want to park. I think this ramp right here that is going to allow me just to taxi out to the runway and take straight off is going to be a good choice. Now I just need to come over here to the parking location and figure out which one it is. I think it might be 60, 70, in that range. Let me come right back once I figure it out. Okay, so it turns out that it starts with spot number 33, so I'm just going to go through the rest of my flight. I'll put this one on 34. I'll put number 3 on 35, and number 4 goes on 36. Okay, we are all set now. Now I just need to figure out where we're going to go from here. Nothing too long today, I don't think. I think I'll just fly up to Krasnodar and then come down and land at Makop. I think that sounds like a good thing to do today. So let me go ahead and plop down a waypoint at Krasnodar. So let me select Add, click on Krasnodar, and then click on Makop, and I'll make the Makop waypoint landing. This doesn't really matter because the waypoints aren't what I'm going to be using to navigate by. It's going to be these NDBs, non-directional beacons, like you see right here, 303 and 625 for Krasnodar. And all that the waypoints will really do for me in this case is just give me a indication on the map that comes up automatically on the kneeboard of where the flight path is taking me. So the smart thing to do in this case is if I had planned on coming to, say for example, NDB number 393, the inner marker for runway, what is that, 07? Or, no, of course not, 08 at Krasnodar, so that when I bring up the kneeboard map, I'll be able to see exactly where the waypoint is. And even though the NDB won't show up on the map when I bring it up on the kneeboard, it'll at least give me an idea of where I should be looking for it. And then, of course, landing at Makop, I'll have these NDBs as well. It'll be either 591 or 288. And it will depend on the wind direction, which one of these is the active runway, because both the inner markers are 591 and both the outer markers are 288. So the specific marker that is active is going to be dependent on the active runway. So we've got the overall flight plan established. Now that's only about half the story. The rest of it is also done here in the mission editor, and I'll start with communications. And you can see that my flight is going to be communicating on 3.75 megahertz AM. Now the trick here is that I'm going to have to convert 3.75 megahertz into a wave number, and that wave number is what I'll be tuning the radio in the aircraft to in order to communicate with my flight. So my flight is on 3.75. I also need to communicate with air traffic control at Anapa, so I can click on Anapa, and I can see that Anapa is also 3.75, so that's convenient. That's actually too convenient to be a coincidence. So apparently when you put an aircraft down at an airfield, it sets your flight to the ATC frequency, which is nice for Anapa, but I also have to worry about talking with Krasnodar when I'm on the approach here. I might just do it like a touch and go. These guys are going to be talking on 3.8 megahertz, and then when I get down to Makop, I'm going to have to talk with them on 3.95 megahertz. So there is going to be some conversion involved in determining what setting on the radios in the cockpit is required to talk with all these different agencies, and to talk with my flight, and to talk with and be able to listen in on other flights if they're in the mission. For example, an AWACS aircraft, or a GCI controller for a Russian aircraft. So what I'm going to do right now is just get my little notepad out that I scribble stuff down on when I'm planning a mission. I'm just going to note the frequencies for the flight plan, and I'll be right back and we'll get into navigation. Okay, and I've done some more work off camera here just for sketching out a little map, and right here on my little real world knee pad I have just a sketch of the overall route showing the headings to fly and also the distance from waypoint to waypoint, or from airfield to airfield and beacon to beacon. So generally speaking, from Anapa to Krasnodar, and I can do this using the little distance tool down here, the bottom part of the tool. Generally, that's about 0.83 per course at 124 kilometers. Then Krasnodar to this beacon, I'm going to actually fly to this one, 312. It's 27 miles, which is about 50 kilometers, 099, and then from the beacon to Makop, again, it's about 126 for, again, about 26 nautical miles, or roughly 50 kilometers. So I've got that sketched out here, and it's going to be visual the entire way. I'm just going to kind of do this as a backup, but in this case, where it's just either navigating by dead reckoning or just by visual landmark to landmark, or going just strictly beacon to beacon in bad weather, in a case not exactly like this, but if I did have to just navigate strictly out the beacons, having as much information about the navigation picture and just doing what I did right here, just sketching out a little map on a piece of paper real quick that has the frequencies and has the overall route, is really helpful. Now, one other thing that I want to do is, since I decided to use this beacon for navigation as well, the 312 one, I'll just add another waypoint right there, just so that it shows up on the kneeboard map. If I even use the kneeboard map, since I've already sketched it out right here, it'll just give me a little bit of a visual backup in the cockpit. Now, what I want to do from here is set one more thing in the mission editor. Now, when it comes to selecting the NDB that you're going to be guiding on, and that the system is going to point you in the direction of when we get in the cockpit, and we'll see that here in a second, you can either manually set the system to the frequency, or you can set up 3 preset NDB frequencies by coming to this tab called Radio Presets, and then I can set these to match. And that's not exactly what I was expecting here. I might have some more conversion work to do, because if I try to put the NDB frequency as displayed on the map into here, I don't think that's going to work because it's outside of the range. Okay, I'll be right back once I figure out what's going on here. 1 second. And I'm back. I don't know why that confused me, but the answer is, of course, the unit conversion from kilohertz to megahertz. The interface for the preset asks us for a megahertz value, so we just need to convert. Like, for example, 662 down here on this beacon is 662 kilohertz, therefore it's 0.662 megahertz. So it's just a easy conversion. So what do we want to do here? We want to set up a combination of manual input into the aircraft system, and also use the preset function. So let me reselect my flight real quick, and yeah, I think I'll fly it manually until I get to 312, so I'm going to make preset number 1, 312, so that would be 0.312 megahertz for NDB channel number 1, and then I'll go with 288 for NDB number 2, and that'll be 0.288, and I'll leave 662 kilohertz on there. That's this beacon that I'm not going to be using as like a direct overflight beacon, but I will have that one there as an option that I could use if I wanted to try to triangulate my position, see what my bearing is from one of these beacons compared to the bearing from this beacon, and then I would be able just to triangulate using the 2 bearings my position along this line. But I think I'm not going to try to get into that much detail on this. I'm going to be lucky just to make the system work. Not that I would be good at this by any means if I had a system that I already knew. So that's the overall plan. That's how you set up a quick mission just to test out a navigation system like this. So let's go ahead and jump into the cockpit and see if we can figure out how to make all this theory work and see it in practice. So I'll be right back. And we'll pick back up on the ground at Anapa. I've got my flight out there to the left, and as a last minute change, you can see that I put some 300-liter fuel tanks on myself and my flight. I just kind of thought of that as the mission was loading, actually. Went back and redid this just in case I burn more fuel en route than I think I will. But let me bring the kneeboard up, and of course I am going to go through the entire process from startup to shutdown, so you're all big boys and girls, so if you just want to skip ahead to the navigation point at this point, feel free. But, okay, and this function of the kneeboard, I know that this is going to update as certain conditions on the aircraft are met. It's going to tell me the status of my gun safety cover. Let me just try this real quick. It's showing safe right now, and it automatically switches over to armed when I do that, that's kind of neat. So this updates as you go, and it looks like it might actually give me just a little double check and just a check of my frequencies as well as we get going. I might come back to this, I might not, I might just forget all about it being there. And here's what I meant about, like in the mission editor, when I said that I put the waypoints down, even though I wasn't going to use the waypoints, was going to be radio navigation. The benefit of doing so, putting the waypoints down anyway, is that you get them displayed on the map that automatically gets generated as part of the mission plan. So you can tell by where you put your waypoints where, in general, the navigation beacons are if you have a set route that you're going to follow. But let me go ahead and skip ahead to the startup, and I'll run through this real quick. And it feels like I've been doing this a lot longer than I have. It's only my second or third startup and second takeoff in the aircraft. So let's go ahead and do this. Battery switch, okay, verified off, generator switch on, and I'll just verify the rest of these are off and just verify these are off. And there's one thing that I am just kind of taking for granted is that the status of the cockpit is what I would want it to be. You know, it's obviously going to be the same every time that you get into the aircraft, but there might be some switches that ideally you would want in a different position prior to startup. Usually the developers are pretty good about having things in a configuration at startup that makes sense and not having something that when you start the aircraft up it could cause damage or have a system on that you don't want to be on. But okay, I'll just take this as good for now. And let's go ahead and get some ground power on the aircraft. So F8. Actually, first, let me go ahead and have them install the wheel chocks. I don't believe, and let me back out and check this, I don't believe the chocks... No, the chocks are, by default, not installed, so that would be nice if they were installed by default, but I'm sure that would confuse a lot of people who aren't necessarily familiar with airfield operations or being around aircraft, and it might not occur to somebody to remove the chocks, even though they would in reality be there. Okay, chocks are in. Now let me go ahead and get external power on. So F8 and F2, F1. And there we go. So external power is coming on, and I should get my lights on just to be able to verify the power's on, and there we go. Got it. Okay, let's go ahead and get switches on. So I know that I need to get all these switches, and these are going to get my instruments. They're also going to get my radio and navigation system up and running. Specifically, this one is the ARC switch. That's going to be the ARC5 navigation system that we'll get to here in a second. And the radio was this one. That's going to get the radio system. So I've got the transmitter back here, and I've got the receiver back here, and I've got controls for it just kind of scattered around the cockpit as we go. Okay, so my switches are configured over here. Let me go ahead and get these up. And of all the panels I've ever run across, for some reason, I just cannot memorize the function. That's boost pump, this one is ignition, this one is instruments and lights, and this one is transfer pump. I've got that one at least, but yeah, the rest of them are just kind of escaping me for now. Okay, so that's all set. Now let me go ahead and go for the startup. So I've got my throttle back to the idle position. I'm going to lift the cover, going to depress the button and keep an eye on my RPM. And there's my ignition light. Release, and as the RPM comes up, I'm just going to reach down here and start to crack open the fuel shutoff valve. Okay, there's 600. Just going to slowly crack it open, watch it come up. There's about 800, 900, 1,000, and open it all the way up, and there we go. That's a good start. Got my temperatures coming up. I'm going to have my pressures and my temperatures. Okay, I've got my fuel pressure, oil temperature coming up. My oil pressure is coming up off of the stop right now, and that'll start to come up as well as I get more RPMs on the aircraft. And I've got the rest of my flights starting to get started out there. Okay, so good deal. And I noticed that I did get a call from the ATC, the tower, so that probably means that the radio is set up to the default frequency for the field by default. So I think that'll be done for us. Now let me go ahead and increase the throttle to 5,000. And I'll be watching for a generator light out. There we go. Let me cut it off right there before it gets too high. Okay, so I've got good pressures, good temperatures, and now let me go ahead and get the canopy closed. And at this point, I can remove external power. Now, what order did this go in? Did it go battery off and then external power off? Okay, so the procedure as called out goes external power off and then battery on. So yeah, let me do that real quick. Let me go F11, F8, F2, and external power off because I do have my generator up and running now, providing power. Okay, so here it comes, and okay, external power is off, so my gauge is just showing what's coming off the generator. So pulling about 40 amps, and the generator is outputting about 30 volts DC, which is just fine. And battery on, and you can see the amps jump up slightly. Voltage. Let me try this real quick. Let me turn the generator off so it's just running off of the battery. You can see I've had my generator light on. So from the battery, pulling 0 amps, and the battery is at about 28 volts. So okay, let me go generator back on. Generator light off, and then yeah, it pops back up. Okay, yeah, I was just curious on that. Okay, so at this point, okay, canopy is closed. Let me go ahead and pressurize and get some oxygen flowing as well over here. And okay, that's a good config for taxi. Now, looking around the cockpit, there would always be more that would be done. You know, usually the startup procedures that are thrown at us, especially in the quick start guides and DCS aircraft, are just enough to get you really up and running. What you would do ideally, especially if you had time, if you weren't like scrambling on an alert mission, is run through a series of operational checks of the components on the aircraft just to make sure that everything is working. You know, I'm going to skip that for now because I don't have the exact procedures called out. I suspect that a more detailed, or at least the real MiG-15 flight manual or supplements to it would include some more stuff that you would do at this point. But yeah, I'm just going to take this as good at this point and press on.